All right, now it's time to look at sequence activities. In our omelette making example, while making the omelette for the first time without much of planning, we ended up in going back and forth for some of the activities. So I hope you remember it. So we decided to define the activities first, then sequence them, then execute them. Sequencing is all about bringing logical flow between the activities. Sequencing activities also helps to use the resources in an optimized way by avoiding resource idle time. Also helps in determining the dependencies. Now let's look at the definition. Sequence activities is the process of identifying and documenting relationship among the project activities. Generally, every activity except the first and the last should be connected with at least one predecessor and at least with one successor activity with an appropriate logical relationship. Anything which does not have a predecessor or a successor most likely will have no connection to the deliverables. This ensures that all the activities are necessary for the project. This process defines the logical sequence of work to be obtained, the greatest efficiency given all the project constraints. This process is performed throughout the project. Of course, leads and lags are added to the activity to achieve a realistic project schedule. Okay, what is lead and lag? Let's look at the meaning in plain way. Who is a leader? The one who leads, who goes in advance than others. Similarly, in project, lead is something which goes in advance than the normal. In project schedule, an activity starts even before the predecessor gets completed. So you will see an overlap. Let's take an example of writing a user manual for a software. Practically, you can write the user manual after the software development completed. But in some cases, even though the software development is not completed 100%, still you can start writing the user manual with the available information to save time. The longer the wait time further delays the release of user manual. Here you're trying to lead writing user manual activity to cut short the total project time. Ideally, it's better to start writing the user manual once the development is completed because all the information will be readily available. But in this case, starting a bit early is not going to create any big harm. You will be starting this activity just before the close of development cycle. The user interface will be mostly ready and the data with input will be ready shortly before completing the user manual. So with the available user interface information, you can start adding the pictures of the menu and other user interfaces. The information may be available in bits and pieces. Even then, it's not a bad idea to start. Once all the user information is available, just like fill in the blanks, you can add those missing information in the user manual. This lead activity can be carried out only when the relationship between the predecessor and the successor activity is discretionary or soft logic or preferred logic. That is, it is not mandatory that you can do only after the predecessor is completed. Also, it should be only finished to start relationship. Here, it's preferable to write the user manual after the completion of complete software development as discussed. But it's not absolutely mandatory that you can start only after the completion of it. In the user manual, it's easy to patch up whatever is missed out even at later point in time before the final release of user manual. There is another type called mandatory relationship where an activity can be done only after the completion of predecessor activity. This is called as hard logic. Example, you can paint the wall only after it's built, right? Obviously. Let's talk about lag. After the completion of predecessor activity, the next activity cannot be started immediately. The successor activity has to wait for a certain period of time. At times, it's called as waiting time. One of the most popular example is after the cement molding, the wall has to dry at least for a certain period of time. You can't do anything prior to that other than waiting. Another example is after you make the interim deliverable to the customer, you have to wait for his or her feedback. In lag, the project duration gets longer. So in the network diagram, this will be indicated as positive number because project takes more time to get completed. As a project manager, you have to pay greater attention on the activities that needs lead and lag time so that you can achieve realistic project schedule. Of course, nowadays there are many softwares that are available to do the sequencing. After sequencing, you end up in having network diagram, also called as project schedule network diagram. Once everything is done, then you set the schedule as schedule baseline. All right, that wraps up the overview. Let's move to the ITTOs.